I want to ask about that, the Cannonball. Like, what got you interested in that record specifically and breaking that record?
Sure. Like, so when I was growing up, you read all these magazines and you see Nürburgring lap times and 0 to 60 times and hot laps and stuff like that. And I was like, well, that's cool. But what I'd really care about is like, what car could I drive from point to point the fastest, right? And so I was like, it would be really awesome. I was talking to my father. I was like, if they just lined up like all of the coolest cars with the best drivers and raced from like coast to coast. He goes, oh yeah, Cannonball. That sounds like you. And so I start researching everything that I can. And that was in probably 03, 04. And this was a couple of years after Brock Yates had released the book. Yates was the founder of Cannonball. He was working at Car and Driver magazine. And so I just started kind of learning everything I could about it and actually interviewed Yates for a high school project on automotive journalism and told him one day I wanted to set his record because nobody had really done it since 1983 with any level of documentation or proof. And so at that point, the record was 32 hours and 7 minutes. And so I said, one day I'm going to beat that. But he had said that he felt like 30 hours was just the wall. He really didn't think that their times could be beaten. But he said even half as many cops and half as many cars on the road, like 30 hours was all that was capable. And, so nobody had really done it. But then a couple of years later, Alex Roy and Dave Maher did it in a BMW M5 in 31 hours and 4 minutes. And
I know Alex.
There you go. Hey.
Yeah.
Super nice guy sometimes.
Super nice guy. Ton of fun.
And so I've gotten to know him quite well since then. I'd met him a couple of times and kind of told him like, hey, one day I, plan to do this. And I'm sure he gets it then as often as I do now. And you don't give it a tremendous amount of credence, but it's one of those things. And so I, ended up doing it in 2013. And so we drove New York to LA in 28 hours and 50 minutes, averaging 100.3 miles an hour.
What were you driving and how was it modified?
100.3 miles an hour.
We drove a 2004 Mercedes CL55 AMG. I had actually planned to drive an S55, which is the bigger four-door car. The CL is the two-door version. But when I bought Kimmy's, the Prostitutes Gallardo, I was daily driving it and just wasn't driving the Mercedes, so I sold it. And so I had to rebuy one in 2012 to use for the run. But we used that because it's got this auto-leveling hydraulic suspension, so it could cope with the 2 additional fuel cells that we put in. So it had the stock 23-gallon tank and then 2 additional 22-gallon tanks.
Oh, yeah.
67 gallons total. So we could go about 850, 875 miles on a tank of gas. And
at
we
100?
Also had, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Probably go probably do 1,000.
Because that'll hurt your fuel economy a little bit.
Yeah. I don't think that's the number one concern in this.
Yeah. EPA doesn't rate that type of thing.
So how do you accomplish that? Because when I talked to Alex about this one night for like a couple hours, and he said that after he did it, like he had so many requests to come speak to government agencies like law enforcement and stuff because they're like, all right, cool. How the fuck did you do that? Because this is our job, making sure that you don't do that. And he got all these invitations to speak before like law enforcement agencies all around the country, the federal agencies. And I guess that they had aerial photography of the speed traps and all the speed points. And they had mapped this thing out to a T, and they knew, and maybe they even had a spotter ahead of them or something like that. There was this whole system for like not getting stopped by the cops going 100 in Indiana,
Oh, right.
How did you do that, Ed?
Yeah, because we averaged 110 across the whole state of Indiana.
How did you do
you were
that?
probably tearing it up in the Midwest.
Because you're just trolling for tickets, right? Like dragging a line across the highway, trolling. How did you do that?
So we had 3 radar detectors, 2 laser jammers, a police scanner, an ambulance traffic light changer, a CB radio, multiple phones running apps like Waze and Trapster. We had paper atlases, 2 different powers of binoculars. We had 5 different people that ran ahead of us at different points of the drive to tell us what's going on. Alex had a spotter plane, which was vastly beyond my budget. And so that worked, I think, okay for him. But air-to-ground communication with a moving target on both ends is really, really hard. So they had to stop to change antennas a couple of times. We had twice as much fuel as he had, so it was a little bit easier for us. And with forced induction, the supercharged Mercedes was probably a little bit better fit, and I had 100 more horsepower. But it was really, you kind of get there to New York City with a capable car and a sufficiently capable team. And it's kind of like you pull the arm on like this mythical slot machine that reveals the outcomes of all these variables that you can't control. How's the weather? How's the traffic? How's the construction? Are there accidents? Does the car break? Are there a ton of cops? And literally everything went perfectly. I mean, it was. I've done it, since then several times in like cheap and old cars as part of other events that are kind of also tribute to Cannonball. And I've never been out there on the road when it was possible in probably 7 or 8 tries since then that it would even have been, even with a car that fast, to have beaten 2850. And so it's hard to explain. I think if you gave me $250,000 and 10 more tries, I don't think I would end up beating it, just because I don't think all the stuff I couldn't control would go well.
Let's talk bathroom breaks. All right, what do you do when you got to go?
We had facilities on board for such things. We had pee bottles and a bedpan, but we didn't use any of it, honestly, because we stopped 3 times for gas. And we stopped about every 200 to 300 miles just for like a 60-second switch drivers stop, stretch your legs, avoid blood clots, and kind of, you drive fastest in your first and last 15 minutes. And so it would just more of that time, and you easily made up the time from when you were not moving. And so we'd pee then and be fine just on the side of the road.
Yeah. What is an ambulance light changer?
So it's like a
where do you get
LED circle, and it's
is it like there's like an ambulance going with someone with a broken femur, and you're like, not anymore, and you turn it off?
So most of them work on encryption, but in California back in 2013 they weren't encrypted, so you don't spend a lot of time on surface streets, so it's not all that useful. It's really cool to say you've got it, and I've enjoyed that. But the only one it worked on is like crossing the last street that you have to go on, and we just ran it anyway. It didn't matter.
So, but this thing, is it a thing that people can buy? And I assume it's illegal.
From red to green.
There used to be a company that sold them under the brand
You don't know.
He's controlling the traffic light.
Yeah, ambulances, though, they get mostly green lights with this device.
Yeah, but sometimes, depending on the setup and how they're wired, it usually actually just turns them all red. So it's red in all directions, and they run it. Sometimes it turns them green. In California, it turned it green. But, you've always heard that rumor that if you flash your bright lights too fast at a traffic light, it'll change. And that would be a pure happenstance that you hit the right frequency. But that's what's happening here. It's just a little bit more programmed and a little higher frequency, more likely to work.
That's great. That's hilarious. Yeah, Alex is a ridiculous fucking guy. He's a character. I'm sure when you saw him, he had that jacket on, didn't he?
Oh, he loves the jacket, absolutely. And
is it a bomber jacket, a big 8-ball jacket?
It's like a German police jacket covered in buttons and insignia.
It's a German jacket from the late 30s.
He looks like a cross between like the most decorated highway patrol officer of all time and an astronaut from the 60s. Like it's ridiculous. With a
little Dr. Evil sprinkled in.
We're on top of this. We're on top of a fucking building in Manhattan at, I don't remember what the place was called. It was some sort of fucking thing where rich people pay like $200,000 a year, and you're part of a club, and you get to enjoy these facilities. And I was invited cordially there. Yeah, and I'm there with some already notable people. I'm there with like a Medal of Honor winner who was just on with Bill O'Reilly, and I'm fascinated with his story. Right, he's talking about Afghanistan and killing terrorists with a rock in hand-to-hand combat, and then in walks Alex Roy in that jacket carrying a fucking steering wheel, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, Dakota. I'm going to have to talk to this gentleman for a minute because he is piquing my interest. And he knew who I was. And so we just spark up this conversation. And by the end, and he knew one of my friends too. He knew, I can't think of his name. What do you know? The guy, the really rich British guy who's a model who races Lambos.
I do. The guy's ridiculous. I forget his name too.
Yeah, his name's escaping me at the moment anyway. But they knew each other well, and he's like, "Hey, Alex, you still own that club downtown?" And I was like, "Yeah, the box. Yeah, I like 2% of it." And I was like, "You own 2% of a club downtown?" He's like, "Yeah, it's kind of nice. I get a table wherever I want, of course. It's okay." He's like, "Have you ever been in a 3-wheel Morgan?" And I'm like, "I don't know what a 3-wheel Morgan is." He's like, "Let's go downstairs." And so we go downstairs, and here's this cigar-shaped torpedo of a vehicle that is technically a motorcycle, but I don't know how to describe it. Maybe Woody can pull up a picture. But anyway, we hop in his 3-wheel Morgan. I do not have a helmet. He gives me some goggles, though, so that was nice. And he takes me on this ridiculous tour of the city. He where notable things had happened. And then we go to the box, and we watch some absolute debaucherous, crazy shit happen on stage. There was strap-ons and whipped cream and dog people and singers wearing nothing but shower curtain beads, and and got real drunk and had an amazing time with Alex. And his stories were incredible from the
He's a
doing the
fantastic
Cannonball run and all that stuff. Yeah, great guy.
Actually, the whole idea for VinWiki Car Stories came mostly from one thing I heard Alex Roy say in an interview. He said he has a story that he tells about being pulled over on the way to a book tour event where he learned that if you said to a judge that you had a lot of evidence, that it corresponded to this experience that many of the officers had had of rescuing some woman who had pooped all over an apartment or something like that. And somebody asked him to tell that story, and he said, it's about 8.5 minutes long. Are you sure you want me to? And I heard that. I was like, who on earth knows how long their stories are? And I'm like, he's recorded himself telling that story. I'm like, that's weird, but that might be cool. And so we ended up trying it.
Yeah. When we were tooling around, we were speeding. We were speeding like crazy in Manhattan. Right. It was late at night, but we were hauling ass in that 3-wheel Morgan, just screeching around corners and stuff. And we get pulled over by undercover like NYPD, like they're in like a Tahoe. They're guys wearing a Yankees jersey. They're detectives or something like that. They
undercover.
I guess they're certainly they're in street clothes. And Alex didn't skip a beat. There was no fear. He'd done this shit before. He before they can say a word, he launches into conversation. Hey guys, I'm Alex Roy. You may know me from this, and that. Hey, business cards out. I'm doing this talk down at the 32nd precinct next week about this and this and that. You guys should come down. And they're like, nice to meet you, Mr. Roy. That sounds like a lot of... They just completely disarmed them. There was no discussion about the fact that I should be wearing a helmet because this is technically a motorcycle. And we're speeding like crazy down these streets. And I'm pretty sure this thing is way too loud to be legal. Like, I think it's louder than is legal. Everywhere we go, everybody's stopping and staring because this thing is roaring like a dragon.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a thing. He wanted to, after we set the record back in 2013, there was kind of an explosion of enthusiasm for like other Cannonball-styled records. So within like 2 years, the Tesla record, the electric car record had been set like 3 times. Somebody else had set a 3-wheeled record. Somebody had set Southern route, like Jacksonville to San Diego.
Oh shit!
There were, a coast to coast to coast record. So people kind of thought, all right, well, I don't want to try to make 2850, so I'm going to do other Cannonball-ish junk. And so he wanted to set the 3-wheeled record in that thing with me. And I'm like, Alex, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. When do I need to be there? And the problem is I'm 6'5", and he's probably like 5'9", 10, I don't know. And so the seat doesn't move, the pedals don't move. So we couldn't figure out a way. They thought if they moved the pedals that I could fit, but then we'd have to like strap blocks to his feet so he could hit them.
Yeah.
And then he ended up doing it with another guy from the drive, where he was riding for at the time. And they did it in the winter, which was a horribly terrible idea.
God.
And it sounded like literally the most miserable automotive exercise that anyone could ever have.
But did he set the record? I
believe it was pretty low hanging fruit. It's like 41, 42 hours.
I mean, I don't know that. And were there a lot of other Morgans competing for this record?
No, somebody else tried it in a Tri-King, which is like a Moto Guzzi that's made into a slightly smaller and less powerful 3-wheeler. Theoretically, a Slingshot from Polaris is absolutely the right choice for whatever masochist elects to try it next time. But it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be out in the air for that kind of a journey. Like being in that Mercedes seems pretty chill, even though I guess you're on point, like looking for cops or whatever and looking for other cars, so you don't run into somebody's ass. But being out in the wind would just be, I'm picturing that scene from Dumb and Dumber where he's just plastered with bugs all over his face.
Absolutely.
Like, that's has anyone done it on like a crotch rocket, like a Yamaha R1 or something crazy like that?
No, usually they're adventure bikes, so either a BMW or KTM. A BMW 1600 holds it now.
Oh shit!
30. It's like 10 hours slower than us. 10 hour, 38 and change. He ran through a tire, like a brand new tire. He spent it and had to find one, so that took him like an hour to change. And a bird hit him in the chest. And so he had planned like a 2-hour nap in Kansas, and it had like oxygen and like I don't know, he had somebody there to like watch his eyes for an RM cycle or whatever. So I don't know.
That's
A lot of interesting measures.
That's a thing. There's the iron butt. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Those guys, BMWs, and Gold Wings often do really well on those.
Yeah.
And just they'll compete to hit every state, compete to go from Florida to California, and they just rock. Apparently Texas is hard. I don't know. I read up all about it. It was interesting. I briefly thought about doing it.
It's a very cool community of crazy people. So like, you know, if you have like, you know, anybody can have a hobby, but if you do something like that really like earns you the respect of other crazy people, you know, it's got some merit.
2014 Mustang, red with a black racing stripe, V6. It's a V6.